Welcome to the Cowboy Office Show, where you'll experience expert analysis and epic discussion on key pillars of the equine industry, including sports, business, hobby, and the horse lifestyle. Your co-hosts are Jody Brainerd and Brian Dykert, industry veterans with over 120 years combined living the cowboy lifestyle. The Cowboy Office Show will help you get involved, ask more questions, and create change. We'll keep riding for you as together we learn from the ride already ridden, learn to listen better to our horse, and make our industry better for all. Each weekly episode will take a ride around the industry in less time than you can load the truck and trailer. Drop your email at cowboyoffice.com to receive weekly updates and never miss an episode. Saddle up as we ride into today's show.
Well, hello and good day, horse world. Mares are foaling as the next crop arrives. And talk about an expert, boy, do we have a show for you today. Welcome to the Cowboy Office. I'm Brian.
And I'm Jody. I'd like to welcome you to this episode in our series, Status of the Horse Show Industry. We have a great guest today to talk horse shows. Today we have with us Paul Bailey. Paul is past president and current vice president of the National Ring Cow Horse Association. He's a fine horseman himself, and he and his family have been active in the industry for years. Paul is also a state senator from the great state of Tennessee. Paul, I've known you for a long time. I know what your schedule's like, and we are so thankful that you've taken the time. Welcome to Cowboy Office.
Well, thank you, guys. I'm certainly honored to be asked to be a part of your podcast, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thanks, Paul, for being here. And just for the audience, you can get to the Cow Horses website. They actually have a great, simple one, NRCHA.com. You can go straight to their website, and as always, we will provide a direct link to the Cow Horses website, nrcha.com, through the Cowboy Office, directly attached to this episode. Paul, we all just first big question is the big one. You know, cow horse reining, cutting, cowboy lifestyles getting a lot of attention. Public awareness, we're all talking cowboy again, a little bit different than the 80s, but give us your simple overview from 30,000 feet. One, on the industry as a whole, the working Western, the cowboy lifestyle, and then, of course, status of the cow horses. Give us your big shot. Good, bad, indifferent. How are we doing?
Well, I think we're doing overall good. I am concerned about the inflationary pressures that we're seeing in our nation's economy, but it's certainly not filtered down to the horse industry, or especially the cow horse industry that I'm a part of. We saw a 20% growth in our shows last year, and so we're expecting moderate growth again this year as we move into our World Show coming up next month in February, and then we have high hopes that the rest of our shows will also see some growth.
That's great. That's great.
That is. Paul, the Ring Cow Horse is a nonprofit, or like the Reining Horse Association, not for profit. You were incorporated in the 40s in California, made the move to Pilot Point, I assume just because it was the spot to go to help growth. For the people that don't know about the Ring Cow Horse, what's the mission?
Well, the mission statement for the Ring Cow Horse is to keep the actual Vaquero tradition alive in training of a cow horse. The Vaquero is the Spanish cowboy that came up out of Mexico into California and worked on those ranches. And they had a unique way in how they trained their horses. They used a hackamore, they used a two-rein as those horses developed and aged, and they also taught those horses how to work cattle. And so the Ring Cow Horse is based on that tradition. We start those horses out as 2- and 3-year-olds in a snaffle, and then progress them into a hackamore, and then obviously into a two-rein, and then into a bridle. So we've tried to keep that tradition alive, obviously, with the evolution of horses and horse shows. Things have changed, but at the same time, we continue to try to keep that Vaquero style alive and a tribute to those true men that came up and had a way of being good horsemen and training horses.
Well, and how does I think that's fascinating because you guys as a discipline certainly are doing it different, and I get it coming from the Vaquero history. But going through those phases from 3-year-old fraternity horses on up, are you seeing the positive effects to finished bridle horses and the fact that they can live and perform and do stuff longer? Because the pressure in the modern horse world is we put so much pressure on the young ones that the common conversation is, give them time and let them develop. You guys already have that as part of your full program. And I'm curious on, do you see that? Are your finished older horses, are there more of them, and are they staying around longer?
Well, it's interesting because if you are a non-pro or even an open rider and you're looking for a finished bridle horse, there's very few out there for you to go buy and be able to compete on. It's amazing whenever you have over 300 entries in a snaffle bit futurity as 3-year-olds, how later on it's hard to find those horses. But one thing we said, the NRCHA board set a pathway a few years ago is to start increasing our payouts and our added money in like our 2-rein classes as well as our bridle classes to bring those horses on so that trainers would have an incentive to continue to train their horses. We always focus so much on the young horse because that's where the big payouts have always been, but we realized that we weren't progressing those horses into bridle horses. So several years ago, we because we are a 3 to 4 event deal, having the cutting, the reining, and down the fence, and then of course in our World's Greatest Horseman we do the steer stopping. But with those 3 events, we decided that we needed to continue the progression of those horses after they leave the hackamore, which is their 4 and 5-year-old year, into the 2-rein year. By having a 3-event deal and adding a lot of money into those classes so that those owners and those trainers would continue to progress those horses and then ultimately into the bridle horses. Now we're seeing World's Greatest Horseman. I alluded to some numbers just a few minutes ago when we started talking. Last year we had 66 entries in our World's Greatest Horseman. This year we have 75 entries, the largest World's Greatest Horseman that the NRCHA has ever seen. The winner of that World's Greatest Horseman is going to get a check for $150,000. So again, I'm just pointing to the fact that we have continued to add additional money into those bridle classes so that those owners and those trainers have an incentive to continue to train those horses past that 3-year-old and 4-year-old year.
Outstanding. Good for you guys.
That is great. Paul, and just a quick question from a trainer standpoint, and since I know a lot of the rein cow horse guys, but I don't stay on top of it like someone like yourself does. If I were a person that wanted to get involved in the rein cow horse, and I was a non-pro rider like yourself, or a starter level, maybe rookie, green. Now you're far beyond that. That's not what I meant to say.
I don't know.
What would happen if is there a? And this is just I'm just making conversation here. But if I wanted to get involved, would the rein cow horse would they if a guy called the rein cow horse, or who would a person contact to say, look, I need to find a trainer that maybe specializes more in non-pro horses than futurity type horses, somewhere. Who would I contact in the rein cow horse to help me with that?
Well, obviously, if you are just brand new, you've seen our sport at. You've come to one of our shows, The World's Greatest Horseman, or you've seen it on television, on the Cowboy channel, RFD, and you want to get involved in that, you can go to our NRCHA.com website. You're welcome to call the office. Those ladies that work in the office can give you trainers that specialize in non-pros. Jody, you know yourself, there's trainers that are strictly open trainers that just train those open horses. But we also have trainers in the cow horse industry that focus just on non-pros. And that's always a positive, especially for someone that's wanting to enter in to the cow horse. And there's lots of knowledge to be gained by those trainers, and certainly go to the NRCHA. Many times just call up a trainer. We see these guys' names in the flashing lights, if you will, but especially on websites and news releases and articles, and many times you can call our cow horse guys up and say, hey, I'm looking to come into the cow horse. Who would be a good fit for me? And a lot of times if they're not the person, they're more than happy to recommend someone for you to be able to get started.
Okay, awesome. That's very helpful too. Cool.
So it's really just picking up the phone, making a contact, and start. So it's not hard, right?
Yeah. I just want to say, as far as the cow horse, and Brian, I'm sure you remember, I rode reiners with Jody probably many years ago. I pointed to a little bronze that I won back several years ago with Jody. I'll just say it doesn't have a 2000 date on it, so it was before 2000 on a horse that was called I'm a Huckleberry. So I was in the reining world for many years before moving over into the cow horse. But here's one thing about our cow horse guys: whether it's Corey Cushing or it's Lee Deacon and Ashley Deacon, any of these trainers that you reach out to in the cow horse industry, we find that they are very accommodating. They understand that the growth of the cow horse is new people coming in, and they want to help find a right fit for you. And Corey focuses primarily on open horses, but Lee and Ashley are just two a husband and wife team that they focus a lot on the non-pros and bringing entry-level people in. But they're willing to help you find, if they're not the fit for you, they're willing to help you find the right person that would work for you. And we just find that in the cow horse, that our guys, our professionals, are just so good about helping entry-level people.
That's outstanding. That's great. I've always been a strong proponent that fundamentally the people in the horse world are fundamentally good people.
Oh, absolutely.
So yes, and you're just reassuring that on a magnified level. Let's talk NRCHA for just a touch, because you guys, you've got a number of uniquenesses, but here's a big one, because you guys are producing 5 to 6 national events in-house yourself, and I give you a lot of credit because you're moving. In a short period of time, when you were president last, is when the snaffle bit fraternity moves from Reno to Fort Worth. And so I'm not going to be 100% accurate because you're always moving. But between Vegas and Scottsdale, Arizona, and last year you were in Murfreesboro, Tennessee with your Eastern Derby and the World's Greatest and the snaffle bit fraternity in Fort Worth, you're producing 5 to 6, could be 7 national events in-house as an organization. That's more than anybody else. Talk to us a little bit. One, you guys are doing it in-house. Good for you guys. The why, and then 2 is where are you going? And obviously, when you produce them in-house at that level, you're leading the industry. You're taking the rest of the industry as you guys do it. So goes everybody else. So elaborate on that just a little bit. Vision.
Well, thank you, Brian, and certainly that has always been. You mentioned vision. Our vision is to produce the best cow horse shows possible, and we have assembled a team of individuals that work all of our shows. And here's what's so unique about that, and really what makes our shows successful. They know our exhibitors, they know the owners, they know how to make the show run. And so when you put that combination together, it is a successful event. when you know that, when you have that back gate person, and you know, whether it's the back gate person or it's Jimmy Kaiser dragging the ground, the judges in the stand, to the office staff, when they know you, when you walk into either the arena or the office and you have a question and you provide good customer service. Sure. We are a customer service oriented association, as well as I think the horse industry in general should be a customer service oriented industry. And so we want to provide that good customer service, and the way we've been successful is making sure that our people know how to run an event, keep it on time. And when we say we start at 8 o'clock, the first horse is walking in the pen at 8 o'clock. And we have a timeline that we go by, and all throughout the day. It is amazing how close that we can say that the next class is going to start, and that class is within just, sometimes it's right on time, but it's within a 5 to 10 minute space. And exhibitors and owners appreciate that, because that allows them to be able to go do something that they want to do and then come back and see their horse or be able to prepare their horse. But I think it's generated around the fact that we have kept a good staff together through the years, and they know our exhibitors and they know the trainers, and that is just a huge part of our success.
What a phenomenal concept. So good for you guys, and I applaud you, and outstanding. But customer service, people to people, that's not new to any business, and so good for you guys. I think it's phenomenal, but then it actually gets my mind going a little bit, because then when you have a core professional staff that is actually doing two huge things, because event production is one thing, and that's huge, and it's never standing still. If you ever want change, all you got to do is get in the event world, and because it's never the same. But you guys producing that level of events across the full year, and then also running your organization. I think that's phenomenal. And so good for you guys, and good for you guys as a board. So,
yep. And let me just say that venue selection has been huge. When you select venues like Scottsdale, Arizona, South Point Arena in Las Vegas, we have 2 shows in Fort Worth, Texas. You're selecting venues that are conducive to our event. And those arenas have a great reputation to those exhibitors and those owners, and it's a destination. One thing we worked on several years ago is we needed to find venues that were destinations, because owners, they love coming and watching their horse, but they may not want to sit in that arena for 8 hours, and they want to be able to go out and find nice restaurants. They want to be able to go and play golf if the time allows. And there's many things that they want to do. And if you provide a venue in a good location that draws people in to be able to come and enjoy the show, and also it's a partnership with those cities, because those cities gain economic development from those individuals coming in.
Yep. The impact is significant. So yes, I hear you. So on all those levels, and I have some direct experience there too. So we won't elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think that's great, Paula. Do you think that the reining cow horse? I mean, it's just. First of all, it sounds like, from the outsider looking in, that you're the perfect size. In other words, you're growing, but not so big that staff can't handle that. I mean, I don't know if there's ever a point in time when you outgrow a staff like that, or if you just continue to, that customer service. It's sometimes the horse business. That's not what you get sometimes.
Sure.
Is what I'm trying to say. In different disciplines, you've experienced it, right?
I have, and that's the reason it's important to me.
yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's great. So.
Well, there's actually, let me interrupt for just a touch, because we actually have a question in industry, and I think it's very pertinent right here, which comes off our website, because our our audience is actually interfacing with Jody and I through our website and what we're doing with the Cowboy office. And the question is this, and it's directly pertinent to this: growth to the industry, and that awareness, and the pros and cons to the net effects to that on organization and business. And I think you're hitting on a big one. One is customer service, but two is people to people. You know, the more people interact with each other on a continuum, your customer service should go up, right? But talk on that just a touch, and what Jody was just alluding to. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that, I think it's all relative, from the owners to the exhibitors, whether it's open, non-pro, to the spectators, to the overall participation. I think that's people. This is expendable money for a lot of people, and so when I talk about customer service, and you have a mom and a dad that's brought their son or daughter to participate in youth events, and they come to the office and they write us a check for $2,000. That's just for that young man or young woman to be able to be there and show. That doesn't include all the other expenses that they've paid to get Johnny or Susie to the show. That is a huge expenditure for a lot of families that they want to that they're spending on their son or daughter. And I think the least that we can do, again, goes back to customer service, because we need to show that family that they're appreciated, as well as any owner that walks in and is writing those checks to an association for them to be able to compete. So I think we just have to always keep that in mind, that this is expendable money, and people can decide to go out and buy a ski boat just as easy as they can to go buy a horse. And that's the one thing that I think our trainers sometimes forget. And that's where I think some of our show management forgets, is that this is expendable money to people, and they can spend that money in other venues and avenues rather than just spending it in the horse industry. And we've always got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, that's a point well said. And the boat one is a common comparable, but I would tell you that this is just personal, but I can go out and spend some time with my horse and have a lot more quality time with my horse than I can with my boat. So that's just me. So anyways, and I've had a boat, so didn't last long. I've still got a horse, so we're all good.
That's really good. Well, like I said, when we're talking about money and this next topic that I'm going to ask you about, I mean, we could probably do a whole show on this, because we're talking about the purse structure. And our industry is moving to try to build wealth through a purse offering. And I've often, just to give you a quick example, in past shows, I think with the reining horse deal, I've always felt like sometimes we're subsidizing the upper end only, and from a trainer standpoint, and I've often said as a trainer that sometimes I get my intelligence insulted, because I may have a horse that can mark a 218, and maybe he's a level 2 or level 3 horse, but I'm forced to subsidize that top end all the time, because part of my money is going to go to and I may as well just go hand a check to somebody that's a top 20 rider, because my horse can't compete with them, and I know that. And so it's been a long-standing sore spot with me from that standpoint. And I'm wondering how the ring cow horse is structured. I know that your prize monies, are going up year to year, but not taking quantum jumps. Just looks like it's a nice, stable, say what at 2021 was 125,000, 2022 the snaffle bit winner was 150,000. Can you expound a little bit on how you guys structure your prize monies on your major events?
Sure. So let me give you a little history. 10 years ago, the overall payouts for the NRCHA, that was for this is just our managed events. This is our premier events. The overall payouts was $2.6 million. 10 years later, ending last year, 2022, with the snaffle bit futurity, we have paid out $5.6 million. That is a $3 million increase in the payouts in 10 years. That's to me, that is huge for a discipline that's our size. And so one of the ways that we've been able to do that is obviously through our corporate partners, but it's also been through the organic growth of members coming in and exhibitors coming in. And yes, Jody, I can honestly say that there's always lots of discussion around that single entry fee, and you're a rider that is maybe just a limited rider, and you're paying that $2,500 entry fee, and you're helping subsidize the open and the intermediate as well. We have those discussions. But one of the things that we also did in the cow horse is to make sure that we continue to bring those young trainers along and those apprentice trainers along, is we created a level 1 open division, which that allows those trainers to be able to, young trainers to be able to take horses that maybe that open rider is not good enough to make the finals in the open division, and it gives them an opportunity to just show in that level 1. Now they can also cross enter and show in the other 3 divisions, and we see that happen from time to time with these young riders. They come in and I mean they just have scorching runs in especially in their futurities and their derbies, and they end up winning quite a bit of that purse money back. But you know, the open riders will also say, well, we're subsidizing the intermediate and we're subsidizing the limited division by us putting all of our money in. So I think that's not a unique situation. I just think all of our associations and our shows, we have those discussions about what is the fairest way to structure an entry fee to help all those that are showing, and we do it on a percentage basis. For example, 70 it's about 70% of the overall goes into the open, and then the other 30% is broke out into the intermediate and also into the limited division, and then of course the level 1 has its own added money. I will also say that at this year's Snaffle Bit Futurity, the winner of the intermediate division got a check for $45,000. It wasn't just a few years ago that that person was only getting a check for $15,000. So we've continued to increase those top payouts. But one of the things that we also made a promise to our owners and our exhibitors when we moved from Reno, Nevada. And that was a huge challenge for the board and for our association, especially. You noted at the beginning of the podcast that we were a California organization. And to move from the West Coast to the middle of the country, and especially the Snaffle Bit Futurity, which is the flagship of our organization, that was a big deal. But one thing we promised is that if you're 25th in the open, you're going to get a check for $10,000, because that last Reno Snaffle Bit Futurity, that 25th place got a check for like $2,500. So we wanted to make sure that if you made the finals in the open division of the Snaffle Bit Futurity, you got a check for $10,000. It's great to say that the winner gets $150,000, but what's even better is to say that that second place horse gets a check for $125,000 or $100,000, and you just incrementally drop it down, because yes, the winner gets all the notoriety, but you know, those owners and those trainers, they put just as much time, money, and effort into to being in the top 25 or the top 30 as that person that actually wins that class, and we want to make sure that those people are rewarded for their efforts.
I think that's a phenomenal and good for you guys. Great job. And all of those. Well, because depth of purse versus everything at the top is a big conversation. And of course, the winner is the winner. And, you know, he who is first certainly beat he who is 25th. But from an industry standpoint, and 1, growth, and 2, attracting, and then 3, economics, when you start paying deeper in the purse, and I got to just use my simple one because, 10 or 15 years ago, I did a in-depth study across sports, and bear with me for a minute. I took golf because I think it has a lot of parallels to the horse world. Point is, I took the PGA, which is a Professional Golfers Association, and I looked at the 100th golfer across a year. And then I looked at them over 10 years, and I looked at what that meant economically, which is about depth, because it's not the guy. And if you looked at 100th, whoever's got the 100th card, on their top list, that's not the guy you see on TV and all the other stuff you do, but you are seeing a person that loves what they do, and economically he's able to build wealth by doing his professional sport. And that's what you're talking about, because if you make the finals, then that economic reward should be there as well. And I think that that's good for you guys. And so, and yes, I think you doubling your purse payout in a 10-year period you've more than doubled it, 2.1, 2.2 times in 10 years. Phenomenal. Good for you guys. Paying attention to that, I think, is a big one for an organization, because it's easy to just put it on the top and then not pay attention to the rest of the economics, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we've all got the same expenses of being there at that show, and whether you've spent $25,000 on that 2-year-old, or you spent $250,000 on that 2-year-old, ultimately your expenses of getting there are relatively the same, and so, but everyone puts a lot of energy and effort into those young horses, and so we want the reward to be there, and that also encourages that owner, especially if you're a first-time owner, or maybe just this is your second snaffle bit futurity, and whether you end up in the intermediate finals or in the open finals, to be able to get a check and to pay at least your expenses for being at that show. It may not pay your entire expenses, but just being at that show, that brings encouragement and to those owners to want to continue to be a part of to be a part of our organization. I do want to say one thing. I asked the board, as vice president, I'm also chair of the finance committee, and so here's one thing here's one. Sometimes that's I've kind of got a. I don't have my black hat on today. Yeah, it is a blessing and a curse. But let me say what I asked the board for approval to do, and they gave it to us this year. I asked for $100,000 to be spread out through the snaffle bit futurity, and so that is $100,000 that I will be able, myself and others, once we know our total entry numbers, once that show is cast, and we know what the hard numbers are and what the payout is on the organic basis, I'll be able to take that $100,000 and spread it throughout all of those other finalists to increase the payout to all those individuals. And so I thought that was something that I brought to the board that was a little bit of an innovative idea. Yes, it's going into the purse, but it's separate from the purse, so that we make sure that if we pay that winner $200,000 this year, that the reserve champion doesn't get a check for $80,000, because I just think that's too big of a disparity if you're trying to pay at the top. So they allowed us to, or allowed my ask of the $100,000 to be used, and we'll spread that out throughout the rest of the purse. And so I think other organizations should take that approach too.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly, and I just want to give you another piece of kudos, because I just looked up on your website. You guys have published your eligibility list for 23 based on 22, and what got my attention was you published a 3-year average for your open and your non-pro exhibitors. And when I looked at that, here's my statement. Your 45 to 46 exhibitors in the open, I'm just looking at the open, are in 3 years are earning 6 figures in prize money. And so which that goes to my story about the professional golfer that was 100th, but he spends 10 years on tour and he's built wealth and he can go do whatever he wants to do by doing what it is that he's honed his skills on. I saw this, and this told me a lot, because now if Jody and I would go back 30 years, because you were talking about in our time, there was only one person a year that would be doing this. You guys are now producing, 40 to 50, which that incentive, the economic drive and reward. So good for you guys. But I thought that was phenomenal.
Well, something else that's been amazing is the number of $1 million riders that we continue to create. It's like every time we have one of our major events, another rider becomes a $1 million rider within the NRCHA. And for us, when I look at us compared to the cutters and to the reiners, we're the small organization. But we continue to produce $1 million riders year after year after year, and for the size of our organization, to me, that's just huge, and that's just a testament to our association and to the people that are a part of this association.
I would agree. There was another piece just came out in Quarter Horse News this month, and it was the top 5 owners in cow, horse, and cutting, and it was actually interesting. They showed both owners, horse owners. And it was pretty close to the amount of purse money those owners had from the cutting association and the amount of purse earnings they had from the cow horses. I was actually overly impressed, which is exactly a testament to what you're talking about.
How good it is. Yeah.
Keep it up. Yep.
Thank you.
That's really good. Okay, so we'll move on a little bit here again, and and we just touched on it, basically, but from the sponsorship standpoint, that's a huge deal, and we had Chris Weaver on. We talked significantly about that, the sponsorship because of the Bob Saddlery and that kind of stuff, and sometimes I'd mentioned that it seems like some of those sponsors get rode to death a lot of times, and some of them, are seeing a great return, and I would just like to talk about them a little bit. This is a great list of sponsors that the Rein Cow Horses got behind them, and from a value and appreciation standpoint, do you think those sponsors are getting a good return with the Rein Cow Horse, or the people that are showing?
Well, Jody, I'll answer that question by saying that when you have, whether it be a company or a breeder calling the office asking how they can be a sponsor of your association, that speaks volumes. It's not that we're out, and we are continuing to chase sponsors daily, but when you have individuals that call and say, hey, how can we become a corporate partner with the NRCHA? I'm not going to divulge the name, but we had just a couple of weeks ago, we had 2 individuals that called me, said, we want to come on as corporate partners, and we started out at one figure and ended up at another figure because they want to be a part of our organization. I know as you scroll through a lot of the you see a lot of the stallions there. There's a lot of these stallions that our mare owners are breeding to, and those stallion owners are seeing a return on their money, and their investment in the association. So I think that says a lot. Now, I also want to say that when I visit with the various corporate partners of NRCHA, they've said this to me for years. They tell me that the NRCHA membership is some of the most loyal supporters of their product of any of the organizations that they actually support, whether it be a boot sponsor, whether it be a saddle sponsor, whether it be a dog food sponsor or a feed sponsor. They tell us that the NRCHA members are some of the most loyal supporters of their products, and that's one of the reasons why they like being a part of our organization.
Wow.
Well, that's fantastic. Again, and Brian, you're going to add to it too, but and it just goes back, when you've got a good product, you know what, people want it. And I mean, it's like that's fantastic. And I think that loyalty is something that, oftentimes there's not enough of. And that's, for the Rein Cow Horse people, for your sponsors to say that about them, that speaks volumes.
I'll say it does. I think that's phenomenal, and it just goes to the rest of people interacting with people, and what does that mean over time? That very large concept of family I've been a big proponent that, fundamentally all of us, no matter what level in the industry, it's good people getting together and enjoying something good. And yes, we got horses and we love our horses, but it's all of that activity. That's a thank you for that statement on behalf of all your sponsors that are supporting you. But that's a big one because we hear it a lot, and the amount of pressure on the sponsorship is where the industry is. And so how those sponsors are seeing the return is a piece that Jody and I are always kind of paying attention and curious about. So thanks for sharing that.
You bet.
Let's talk growth just a touch. For the obvious, yes, that growth comes in so many different forms. I want to specifically talk about the hobbyist, the non-pro, that person that likes our industry but makes a living doing something else versus the pressure in the industry of that group of people that are truly making a living out of it. And whether they're breeders or owners or business people or trainers or veterinarians or farriers, those are all people that truly are making a living out of our industry. But from an organizational standpoint, kind of up there servicing both of those sectors. Talk about what growth means to the cow horses and how you guys are looking and managing that as we go forward, especially as we now talk about an audience.
Well, how do you manage growth? And I can say that has become a challenge with our major events because we've gone from having 5-day major events to now 10 and 12-day major events, and trying to schedule so that non-pro can only have to take off say three work days to be able to come and show their horse, and then be able to return back to their job so they can come to the next major event. So that's always a challenge whenever your shows begin to grow. So then that comes down to venue selection. You've got to have venues that have multiple arenas so that you can have 2 arenas going. That creates an issue because guess what? You've got a non-pro showing in one arena. The trainer professional is over showing in the other arena, and that non-pro's not always getting the attention that they feel like that they need because of the split. But if you don't do that, then your show just continues to add more days to its schedule. So I think that is a challenge that we have faced as far as the organic growth of our shows, and so choosing those venues is always important. I think that in regards to production and so forth of our events, we looked several years ago at the NFR. Those of you that follow the NFR, they have a start time and they have a completion time. So when it came to production of the world's Greatest Horseman and it came to production of especially the Snaffle Bit Futurity, we moved those finals to a Saturday. We had a hard start time, and we knew that you can keep an audience attention for about 4 hours, maybe 5 hours. So we looked at it that they would come in, they would participate in our event as far as just being a audience participation, and so we wanted to see how NFR did that, and that's exactly what they did. So that's one of the things that, as far as production, that we've done with our venues. But again, back to your hobbyists, those that just want to have the horse, they just want to go and show occasionally. They're not they just love the sport, but they don't have a lot of expendable money that I've mentioned several times on this podcast, but they have enough money that they can come and participate when they can. You have to bridge that gap between them and those professionals and those owners that want to have 2 and 3 Snaffle Bit Futurity horses or a World's Greatest Horseman. So it's always a challenge, but again, you've got to treat that entry-level person coming into your association just the same as that $1 million rider and that $1 million owner. Because they're all there for the same purpose, and that's because they love the cow horse.
But we see you guys doing stuff different, and I'm going to make one specific because the National High School and Junior High School Rodeo Finals, and you've got a section in there for youth cow horse participants. So pulling that part out and servicing it different, I think, is a fascinating concept and good for you guys. And I would think you're non-pros. We all feel those pressures. And so then as an organization or an industry, how do we start looking at them a little bit different? And that's what Jody and I have been a big proponent of, starting to look at it different. And are there different ways to service those? I think you hit it right, that you should service them all well. It's all important. But what you guys have been doing in the last, I don't know, it's been 5+ years, because you've got a youth section of cow horse competition in the National High School Finals.
Right. Yeah. Well, so several years ago, you'd get to the NRCHA World Show, and you'd only have 6 or 7 youth showing in our 2 youth classes. Now we've got 30 and 40 and 50 youth coming in and showing. We also created the world's greatest youth competition that'll take place in February at the World Show, and now we've got like 30-something youth that are participating in a 4-event deal. And let me tell you, that is not just some little class that's going on. You're talking about a horse last year and a young lady that won the youth World's Greatest Horseman that marked like a 151 in the fence work in the prelims and a 152 down the fence in the finals. And I mean, and that wasn't they didn't get a mulligan on that. She earned every point. And but I'm just saying, and the competition is huge in that deal. And so when we entered into became partners with the High School Rodeo Association, we saw the explosion of our youth into the reining cow horse. And so now you have 125 that are competing at the High School Rodeo Finals in the cow horse. And then now we've seen such a huge growth in our youth back in our regular shows. And then we've had our other associations that are adding those high school rodeo classes into it. It's just brought a whole new group of individuals into the cow horse as far as youth are concerned. And let me tell you, they like the cow horse because it's a multi-discipline event. They get to do that reining. They get to go down the fence with the cow. And now if they want to show in that 4-event deal, they're just like those professionals. They get to rope that steer. So it's cowboy stuff. And whether you're a cowgirl or a cowboy, those youth kids, they really like that.
Yeah. Good for you.
I think that's fantastic, and I don't want to take too much of our time. But the nice thing about this show is we get to kind of go every direction that we want to. And I had told Brian right before we got on the air that I had a thought that I would like to put to you, and I'm not asking you. I'm just asking you for an opinion, and if it's possible. But I told Brian, I said, for the last umpteen bazillion years, we've been doing a lot to increase our horse pedigrees so that our horses do what we want. But we haven't exactly been breeding cows to get better going down the fence, right?
That's right.
So how do we do that?
Right. But anyway, I've got I had the chance to judge the Arabian Nationals a couple of years ago, and Bobby Ingersoll came in to do the herd, to do the cutting and that kind of stuff. And Bobby is still sharp as a tack. I mean,
absolutely.
And I got looking at your list of Hall of Fame trainers, and I got thinking that these guys have got such a tremendous amount of accrued knowledge. It's not necessarily about the reining part of the deal. I don't care about that, but they know more about a cow than they forgot more than I would ever know playing with it. And is there not some way to utilize those guys that maybe aren't training anymore? We know Doug Williamson's a freak. He's still in his mid-70s, can go be competitive. But maybe there's some guys there that want to stay actively involved and are just so smart. Could you not put some of those kids together with a half dozen of those Hall of Fame trainers and just do the cow work, go down the fence, teach those kids how to read a cow, or try to impart some of that knowledge at those older guys that maybe still have a love for the horse, but maybe aren't training, that full barn anymore. Is that a direction that the reining cow horse could go, or maybe you do it already? I don't know.
Well, Jody, you're exactly right, and let me just say that Don Murphy has probably imparted more knowledge into me about the cow horse and the origin of the cow horse than anyone that I've been around, and it's, he gave me the reason why we take the horses down the fence, and why you want to make sure that horse is in lead whenever you're circling the cow. And I mean, there's just so much information there that we need to be going back to those Hall of Famers, and I have. Let me just say this: this is, you've just added another point to my bucket list that we need to get started on. But we need to get these individuals not only coaching these youth, but we also need to get them on video telling more about the history and why we do the things that we do, because when they're gone, we've lost that, other than the people that they've told their stories to. But we need to always be reminded of where we have come from and why we are today. These men were horsemen. They I mean, the stock that they actually had to train was tough. And you guys, y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, the horsepower that we breed today is a totally different horse than what Don Murphy and Bobby Ingersoll and Doug Williamson originally started out on, and the reining horses that you guys have trained. I mean, it's just a totally different horse today. And so these men actually had to work and train those horses to do what they've got. And you're right, Jody, when you have a Bobby Ingersoll that's forgotten more about how to work a cow than some of these guys will ever know. We need to be imparting that knowledge into our youth so that they fully understand the origin and of the cow horse and really horsemanship. I mean, that's one thing that I always talk about with the cow horse too, is I feel like that we have true horsemen because it is a multi-discipline event. You're not just training that horse for one event. You're having to train that horse to do multiple events, and that takes a horseman to be able to do that. And I'm not taking anything away from my reining trainers, anything away from my cutting trainers, but I'm just saying you have to be a horseman and love the horse to be able to train those horses to do multiple events.
I profound statement. Thank you on all of those levels. We fully agree with you. I want to ask you a specific question. Only as agriculture and the whole modernization of the world is trying to move forward, cattle supply, what Jody asked is, cattle are being bred for the natural consumption that we use cattle for. You guys just get to use them, part of that journey, which is about displaying the magnificence of horsemanship and their partner, this phenomenal athlete, the horse. That's truly a cow horse. I mean, that's one of the things that the quarter horse is actually really well known for, that cow sense. But cattle supply, is that an issue? Is it not an issue? Especially producing 6 or 7 national events and talk. Yeah.
Well. So, Brian, you know this. We have to have about 22 to 2,400 head. That's yes. 2,200 head, 2,200 head of cattle just for Scottsdale, Arizona, for Las Vegas, Nevada, and I mean, sometimes we're having to truck those cattle 400 and 500 and 600 miles into those venues. So cattle supply has been tough. Then whenever we have events in Fort Worth, we're competing against the cutters because the cutters use thousands of head of cattle. We used about 3,600 head of cattle at our snaffle bit futurity. So you can see that there's always a challenge with the cattle supply. The good news is that there's thousands of cattle on feedlots there in the Texas Panhandle that we a lot of times have to pull from into our events, but it's a challenge. And also some exhibitors don't realize this, and owners don't realize this. When you walk that calf into the arena, that's $1,000 a lot of times. That's $800 to $1,000 of money standing there and with that calf. And so it's always something that people need to be reminded of, is that when we use 2,200 head or 2,500 head of cattle, we're paying about $250,000 for those cattle to be there. And so when we have to increase our cattle prices to cover the cost of those cattle, there's a reason that we have to do that. It's because our supply is shrinking, and those owners of those cattle are demanding more from us.
Right. Well, and you got all the other pieces in the economics that are going on. I mean, you got transportation costs, the rest of that. I think it's easy from the outside looking in to take for granted those kinds of things. And so not only are they well taken care of, but the specifics that you guys would need for basically the two events, you got to do your herd work, and then you got to do your fence work. And so I've always found that to be fascinating. Yes, I have direct experience. I've worked with your herd manager and the trucks in and out, and so they don't stop. Right. So tending to 1,000 horses and having stalls is one thing, and a different piece of the equation when you start talking about having to handle 2,000 to 3,000 head of cattle as part of the event and the athleticism. It just adds a whole nother dimension. So, yeah.
And I just want to say this, and I won't labor on it, about $5 to $5.50 per mile to truck that cow in there.
Yeah, and yeah.
Transportation
and
cost.
It's not going down. So
no,
yeah.
No, that's crazy. So when we're talking about this, and I hate to this is a question that I'd put to Brian and put to you, but I don't want to use politician and horse in the same sentence, but
it's one and the same.
I do want to ask you if you've noticed any parallel, and this is just a light question, but have you noticed any parallels between that political career that you are taking part in and being in a leadership role for the reining cow horse? I mean, as far as handling people, anything like that?
Oh, I think so. We've talked about it. It's all a people business, and politics is a people business, and being on the NRCHA board is a people business. You also have a committee system that you just the same as the legislature. You have a committee system there that legislation and ideas move through. Same with the cow horse. You have your professionals committee, your owners committee, your non-pro committee that bring their ideas to the board, and then ultimately, if you're passionate about that idea, just like in the state legislature, I have to lobby sometimes for my ideas and my legislation, and I have to do the same relative to the reining cow horse. If you remember, I mentioned earlier about the $100,000 idea. Of course, you have to realize all those professional trainers sitting in the room was all for that idea, but I didn't have to lobby real hard. And so that's also a parallel with the state legislature. If it's a great idea, then you don't always have to lobby hard. And then there's I can remember. So thinking back about our growth, real quick, guys, I remember whenever I first got on the NRCHA board, we only had one boxing class, and it was called a 5K boxing class, which meant that once you won $5,000 in that boxing class, you were out and you had to go down the fence. And for a few years, I lobbied the NRCHA board that we've got people that never want to leave boxing. They can't go down the fence. And I had trainers tell me that were on the board at that time, I can teach anyone to go down the fence. You can, but the fact is there are people that never want to go down the fence. And so once we finally moved past the idea that everyone had to graduate out of boxing and ultimately go down the fence, we saw a huge explosion in our membership and bringing new people in to a point to where we created a 1K. Then we have the 5K, and now we have the regular boxing class. Now we've created a box drive box class, which is kind of an introduction for those that may want to ultimately go down the fence. So you have to be open-minded to be able to bring those projects. But I can tell you, it's just like the state legislature. I had to lobby for 2 or 3 years to ultimately get the board at that time to create a non-pro boxing class so that people never had to graduate out of boxing if they didn't want to.
Good for you guys.
Yeah,
and I think that's fascinating. And many of us in the industry, your role on an elected leadership at the state assembly level in Tennessee. Phenomenal, and God bless you. And equal to that is the role of being on elected association nonprofit boards, because those are thankless kind of positions. But and that's why I say God bless you on both those fronts, because one, you got the time, but two, you got the interest, and you've all obviously stayed with it for quite some time. So good for everybody, but good for the industry along the way. But I would think that your understanding of the entire political system would be of huge benefit when you look at association governance and that kind of stuff, and the fact that you guys are producing in multiple states. And so I always found that kind of fascinating, because most of the time you don't see, politicians out in the field and the rest of the industry, and maybe it's just because they have other interests, but I found that fascinating. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
That is great, Paul. And I'll turn this back over to Brian here. Just another one, but from you were just talking about your trainers. Your trainers on your board right there. Thinking that 100,000 was a great idea. Anytime you're self-employed, you have a tendency to be a little bit self-serving, right? It's what the horse business is. So
absolutely. And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say, where's the biggest influence coming from in your reining cow horse, say on your board of directors? Is it from the trainers, or from the breeders, the owners? Who has the biggest influence, say, just on your discipline, do you think?
Well, so we're relatively a small board in comparison to probably the NCHA, the NRHA, and AQHA especially. We're 14 members, so that allows us to be a little more nimble and move quickly. And I can say that we are very open-minded. All of us are very open-minded to make sure that we take care of the non-pros as well as the open riders. There's always some disagreements in how we get there, but we ultimately find common ground to make sure that we do what's in the best interest of the cow horse. I'll just say it. Someone may throw rocks at me when they see me, but we sometimes look at what the NRHA's done and what the NCHA has done, and we say, we don't want to do that. We don't want to go down that pathway.
Really good thinking.
And so they have been. Sometimes their trial and errors have actually helped us in formulating decisions of what to do and what not to do.
Well, I think that's powerful, because there's as many lessons in learning what not to do from those that have tried than always being the one to do something different. But I think that's a powerful statement, and it's by all means. So good for you guys, which would lead me to the last piece, Paul. Where are you guys going? Just give me the short vision, and I say that from the outside looking in, because you guys have been probably moving more forward than all the rest of our disciplines in the last 5 to 10 years. And I can give you the parallels, because when you talked about the snaffle bit fraternity moving from Reno to Fort Worth, I actually was involved in that, because I was putting in a proposal to try and get it to Scottsdale in my career. But the point is, from an association standpoint, you were saying how hard that work was. I was involved. Jody was there when the NRHA moved from Ohio to Oklahoma. And the entire industry in those days was adamant that it was a dumb move. And it's not about it. The rest of it is, it was the right move. And so so just talk for a touch. Cow horses and the competition of cow horse has such a unique and phenomenal spot. And I give you guys as leadership a lot of credit for opening your mind, looking forward, starting to do things different. The youth with the high school rodeo finals. So where are you going, if you can share that? What's the next 3 to 5 years look like for you guys?
Well, we we want to fill the Dickies Arena for the world's greatest horseman and the snaffle bit futurity. I mean, we want to have 25,000 people. We sold out the John Justin. Then we've moved over to the Will Rogers. We've been selling the Will Rogers out. Our vision is to sell out Dickies Arena for the world's greatest horseman finals and for our snaffle bit futurity finals, and put 25 to 30,000 people in that arena screaming for those horses going down the fence, and so that's our vision to continue to create an event that is spectator friendly and something that people want to be a part of, whether they're just coming to watch it or whether they want to ultimately show in it. But I think as an organization, we can't forget about those people that have brought us here. And we always have to look back and remember that person that's been a member of this organization for over 40 years. And we've got to always keep that person in mind, as well as that person that we're trying to fill a 25,000 seat auditorium with. And so we have to make sure that we don't forget about them, and that we continue to create levels of competition that's conducive to all that want to participate within the cow horse. And the cow horse is not an easy discipline. It's we've said this several times on the podcast. It's a multidiscipline event. And so, but we have to, we're cognizant, and we want to continue to be relevant in the Western horse industry, and we want to make sure that we continue to move forward, but we don't lose focus on those that have brought us to this point.
Well, thank you. I think that's phenomenal, and I actually, I've always been a proponent that our industry, I say this on a plural standpoint, we've got to start looking, and you guys are already doing it, and I hear you on providing the services to the segments of the industry all day long. But I've been a proponent, and the Rainers tried this with a non-pro fraternity back in Denver years ago. And so it's from an organizational standpoint, how do we start looking at servicing those to the needs that they need, as opposed to trying to do them all in the same thing. I see you guys already playing with that. So I give you a lot of credit. Your boxing, there's a big one. And yes, people, it's okay that they can, but if they don't want to, they don't have to. And so you guys making those adjustments as you're going, I just think it's phenomenal. So I give you all the credit and kudos there is, and we wish you all the best. The other thing is, remember, the Cowboy office could probably help you with getting some of your Hall of Famers on recorded historical sessions. So don't forget us.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Great idea.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I can't tell you what I would pay to go sit and listen to 6 of those guys help coach some kids going down the fence and hang around them over a glass of wine at night. You know what I mean? It would be part of it. It's like it would be just great for everyone. But
before
Paul,
you guys, I'm going to interrupt because you mentioned Doug Williamson a few minutes ago. You're talking about someone's hero. I mean, many times today, when you look at the finals of whether the cow horse, the reining, or the cutting, it is a competitive event for young people. It was, once you reach a certain age, it's not always easy for you to compete against those younger guys. Doug Williamson has come back year after year after year, and most of the time makes the Snaffle Bit Futurity Finals at his age, and he's my hero.
Many of us. Many of us.
Exactly. It's like, there's still hope, right?
Yeah, for me too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Paul, I just can't. We can't thank you enough, and we got to give thanks to the Rain Cow Horse Association, all the staff that you talked about, the leaders that you serve with, and we know the hours that you guys put in. Anybody that's put a horse show on before. But we wish you the best, and we just, like I said, we thank you for your time and your expertise.
Well, I don't know how much of an expert I am, but I'm glad to give you my time.
You are on multiple levels, and so from being a state senator to a board of director, to an active competitor and an owner, your expertise is highly sought after, and so thank you very much. I've got to duplicate what Jody was just saying. So we can't thank you enough. And please share with your staff and your colleagues on the board. Thank you for everything that they do every day. Thanks for bringing the excitement of the cow horses to the public, and we all look forward to being part of that in our own ways. As a reminder, we will provide direct links through the cowboyoffice.com website for the NRCHA.com. Again, NRCHA.com. And we want to remind the audience to, when you watch or listen to the podcast, hit your subscribe or like button, because that's what helps us to stay productive. And until next time, enjoy the ride.
Thank you, and stay in the middle.
Today's episode is brought to you by 4D Productions in cooperation with the Consultment Agency, a full-service agency that helps bring forward-thinking equine brands into the 21st century using digital skills and services such as website development, graphic design, social media, and media production such as the podcast you're consuming here today. Thank you so much for riding along with us today. Sign up at cowboyoffice.com to be the first to know about topics affecting the industry we love so much. You can reach out to us with topics you care about by finding us on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and all podcast platforms. And remember, share this episode with someone that may enjoy it, because the more we can share our horses with others, the better our world will be.